Hi, Dr. G. This is Ryan Hill with KIN454, and we're going to be going over our critical assignment presentation. So, going over our population, my chosen population is male jiu-jitsu practitioners aged 20 to 30. I chose this population due to the fact that it is the most likely to see a continued rate of physical activity continued on from the teen years, and it's also the most common age to see a decline in physical activity. So I thought that that kind of dichotomy there would be kind of interesting to observe. I chose jiu-jitsu practitioners pretty much just because martial arts are a common mode for physical activity, and jiu-jitsu is a pretty commonly practiced martial art. So, factors regarding physical, social, and family circumstances and environments. Really, honestly, the factors surrounding family circumstances, they can vary so much that they're honestly kind of a non-factor. So many people, so many different people from different backgrounds, ethnicities, and family histories participate in the sport. Really, the main family circumstance or circumstantial factor that kind of influences that or influence participation is the socioeconomic status, and we'll kind of go into that a little bit here, or we'll go into that more here in a little bit. Factors surrounding social environment can also vary significantly, but these are kind of a factor between behavior and do kind of influence behavior because uh, their motivation behind it changes depending on why they're there. So some people participate in order to compete, some participate for recreational purposes, some people participate for fitness purposes, trying to get their cardio in, trying to get in shape, and other people, they want to learn jiu-jitsu for self-defense. It's a martial art. It makes sense. The physical environment is really honestly the only constant within my population because I only observed a single gym. So going into motivation and desire to compete. So for motivation, really most participants, they're just intrinsically motivated. There's really not much extrinsic motivation that goes along with jujitsu and really martial arts in general. Really most people don't compete. Most people are just in it for the physical fitness, the enjoyment, and the self defense aspect of it. And there are some who you know that go because they want to work on their self control, their discipline, their emotion regulation, and controlling the ego, which martial arts in general, just as a whole, it's not specific to jiu-jitsu. They all really promote all that kind of stuff, which really just only add to intrinsic motivation and kind of reduce extrinsic motivation a little bit. That's not to say that there is no extrinsic motivation. It's really only found in those people that compete. And not to say that they can't have their own intrinsic motivation, it's just they have a little bit more extrinsic motivation than others might. Socioeconomic factors can influence motivation because gyms are not always affordable, but some gyms offer reduced prices and work programs for people that can't afford a membership. I'm not really sure if the gym I observed does offer these services or not, but I know it is a fairly common thing for martial arts studios in general. Maybe not jujitsu gyms specifically, but for martial arts as a whole. Um, Also, this can socioeconomic factors based on that, whether lower socioeconomic status, that can actually increase motivation some because they have this this outlook on it like, hey, if I'm going to be paying for this, if I'm going to be spending this money that I don't really have on this service, then I'm going to make dang sure that I use it. Like, I'm going to make sure that I go to every single session that I signed up for, every single session that I paid for. I'm going to get my money's worth. But then it also can take away from motivation because you do have that, oh, this is too expensive, I can't afford it kind of thing, kind of attitude. So going into desire to compete, it is perpetuated by the nature of the sport. Really, with all martial arts, and doesn't really matter whether you're in competition or whether you're sparring. It's one man striving against another person. You're going against one another. Competition is the nature of the sport. Generally, all out competition is forbidden outside of actual structured competitions, really just for the sake of partner preservation. Um, but competition is still an integral aspect of the sport. Instructional periods, however, do tend to curb the competitive aspect of the sport in favor of the cooperative nature of proper instruction. Really, with all combat sports, injury can occur if instruction is not properly delivered and received, so competitive drive must be set aside during this time. If you're trying to go too fast or go too hard, during instruction and you're not receiving it properly, you're not using the correct techniques, you're not doing the right things, you can easily hurt yourself and others. So going into need to feedback and stress. So, as stated previously, injuries can occur if instruction is not delivered and received properly. So, as such, there is a heavy need for feedback within the sport of jiu-jitsu, specifically within instruction and practice. Uh, There is, however, some discrepancy between the styles of feedback that are used based on the preference of the athlete and the instructor. One option is there's really only two of them. One option is trial and error style feedback, which really heavily relies on partner feedback. You get your initial instruction, and then you're going, everybody splits up, they grab their partner, and then, they're kind of practicing on one another. What we kind of call rolling. And you're just doing it slow, going through the motions. You're not really actually trying to do anything. You're not really competing. They're not offering any resistance. They're just kind of telling you if you're doing the techniques right. So it does rely heavily on partner feedback. The other option is instructional feedback, which relies heavily on instructor observation and correction. So uh, after your initial instruction period, you'll it's kind of similarly, you'll bring your partner out. Generally, at this point, everybody else will kind of set aside, and one person will go out aside, or one person will go at a time, or one pair, I guess I should say, and the instructor will observe what they're doing and correct anything that they're doing wrong, give them tips, give them just give their feedback, right? um, Now this is kind of influenced by the environment, whether that be social or physical environment. Obviously different gyms are going to have different preferences, different people are going to have different preferences, and different people are going to have different preferences based off of their goals, so their social interactions. um, you know Generally you're going to have some people who they prefer to go a little bit faster during instruction period versus a little bit slower, and really like take their time with the movements and understanding everything. But that kind of goes less into the social environment and more so into personal traits. So there is a little bit. There's a little bit of overlap, but it's mostly individual, not as much environmental. So in sport stress is really almost non-existent within the sports of jiu-jitsu, with or with pretty much the exclusive stressor being found in competition. External stress can be a major factor for participation, though, because it can be a driving factor for participation, because the athlete might use jujitsu to blow off some steam. That is honestly a big reason why I used to do it, because it really did help. If I had a really stressful day at work, just go and roll around and fight with other guys. It was a lot of fun. Blow off some steam. I always left feeling happy. So it can also act as an inhibiting factor for participation, as the stresses may bind the athlete's time, which would prevent participation, obviously. If they have other obligations that take away from their time in the gym, then they're not going to go to the gym, right? Simple stuff. So for our goals, we're going to start with our process goals. And these are just real simple ones. These are going to be your process goals are going to be your day-to-day things that you yourself change. They're more, it's the process. There's no real end goal to them. They're going to be stuff that you do, every day or every week, or kind of just something that process goals are more just a step that you would implement in order to achieve your goals. So the first process goal is going to be not to miss a training session for a month. It's a good place to start. Show up to every session that you have scheduled. Um, yeah, and then The second process goal is going to supplement instruction with strength and endurance training. Um, Jiu-jitsu, really martial arts, but jiu-jitsu specifically is very, very, very tiring. You get tired very, very quick. And if you don't have the strength to, put your partner into the holds that you're being taught, that kind of stuff during sparring, then and you don't have the endurance to keep up with your partner during sparring, it can create a pretty big problem while you're there. So it is important to supplement instruction with strength and endurance training. So that is a good process goal to make. For performance goals, going into the people that are there for cardio, to get their cardio in, to lose some weight, that kind of stuff. They could set a goal for lose X amount of pounds. Like I want to lose 20 pounds and kind of attach a time to there too. I want to lose 20 pounds in a year, something like that. Another performance goal would to be to receive a whatever belt, whatever your next promotion is. So, for if you're a blue belt, or sorry, if you're a white belt, set your goal like, okay, I want to be a blue belt within a year, right? That kind of stuff, or within 2 years. And then your outcome goal, that's going to be something like, hey, I want to win a competition. I put MMA here just kind of because, but, win an MMA competition, or this one could be a really fun one. This is actually a goal that I actually set for myself. I never did achieve it by the time I had to quit jiu-jitsu because of my outside stressors, but um, secure a hold on a higher belt during sparring. So whenever they're trying to resist you and you're just kind of rolling around, they're trying to get you in a hold and you're trying to get you're trying to get them in a hold. Like secure a hold on them. That's a pretty tough thing to do. People that have their higher belt. I mean, they're technically a lot more advanced than you. You do have to pass certain, I guess tests is a good way to say that. You have to have mastery over certain things in order to advance to a higher belt, a higher degree belt. So I think that would be a cool, like a fun little interesting goal to make. So strategies for achieving these goals, these are all respective to their to the prior slide. So for the process goals, for not missing a training session, you could make a friend at the gym who will help keep you accountable. That's a really good strategy, is kind of like getting that social support. A strategy for supplementing instruction with strength and endurance training is to plan training sessions ahead of time and block your schedule off, and that goes for your strength and endurance training as well as your uh, jujitsu training sessions. So for your performance goals, a good strategy for losing X amount of pounds is to implement the behaviors learned in jiu-jitsu into every aspect of life. Because in all honesty, jiu-jitsu is not just a sport. It is there are very philosophical um, aspects to it, right? So getting that self-control, getting that discipline. So self-control in your diet, discipline to adhere to your physical activity, your training sessions that you made up in your last goal, right? Um, really implement that. Good strategy for receiving your whatever belt is understand the requirements that your gym or some gyms belong to an organization and do that all interlinkedly, and some gyms go based off of just the sensei of the gym. So kind of just whichever one is more applicable to you, but understand the requirements that your gym has set for advancements and work specifically towards achieving them. Set that specific, have your, I guess this is more of a, you have to have a lot of little tiny performance goals in order to do this one, but you have to understand how to do certain holds, you have to understand certain lingo, you have to understand certain movements, certain principles, have certain attitudes, all this kind of stuff. A lot of factors go into, you know, uh, belt advancements. So really just understanding the requirements that you need to meet in order to make that advancement, right? That's a really good strategy for achieving that. For our outcome goals, a good strategy for winning an MMA competition is to work with the instructor and to assist in learning how to use jujitsu techniques in a practical application. So, being able to take the things that you learn in your jujitsu and being able to apply it to defending against Muay Thai or defending against boxing or, stuff like that. Like, work in other martial arts with your jujitsu training, or at least understanding the principles or how to apply those, would be a really good way to work towards um, winning an MMA fight. And then securing a hold on a higher belt during sparring. This a strategy for that could be to spar against a wide variety of people in order to learn how to attack and or to learn how to attack against a variety of defense styles, right? So um, each person has their own specialty, right? So, and as you get closer and closer to achieving a higher belt, you're going to have more and more things that you have mastered, right? So, the people that you might spar a bunch of, like, if you're a white belt, you spar against a bunch of different white belts that they're each good at their own thing. They each have mastered their own techniques and their own stuff, right? And you kind of piece together how to defend against their attacks and how to attack against their defenses, right? And then you can implement all of the things that you've learned fighting against each of those individual people to the person that has, that higher belt that has mastery over those things. I feel like that's a great strategy for achieving that, right? So going into the theological application, so really honestly, the good Lord calls us to be active, if nothing else. He does want us to be active and increasing and devoted to Him in all aspects of our life because it brings Him glory, it glorifies Him. He wants us to be active in all good things, from our ministry to our lifestyle, to our knowledge, and to our spirit. However, this can be pretty difficult with the unrelenting attacks from the devil and from the world. We get tired. We want to quit. We come to desire slothfulness as a rest from our activity, which can that should say that can lead us astray from our purpose of doing. Um, that can lead us astray from our purpose of doing, right? Because that's what we're called to do. We're called to do, to go out and do. And the psychological aspects of this course and in this profession can absolutely lead us to help others in facing the devil's attacks head on, prevent those attacks from and those people from experiencing burnout from our action, and to help them just go out and do, right? Whether that be in their ministry, in their lifestyle, in their knowledge, or in their spirit, right? So, kind of playing off of that a little bit, something that I've learned in this class is the profound effects burnout has on an individual. And I kind of learned this through the lessons, and I have been experiencing it through the past 8 weeks. I understood beforehand that burnout really brought behavior change and stresses with it, but I really didn't understand the physiological implications that were really associated with that. Whenever I was reading through the cognitive affective stress model, I want to say it was chapter 22. I could really see in myself, those 4 steps that, like, you have your high situational demands, and then you develop negative cognitive appraisal of it, which brings a negative physiological response, which brings about negative behavioral changes. Um, so I really, so I re- Sorry, my family's upstairs making a ruckus. Um, so I really those high situational demands, right? I returned. So since I started school, I went from working full time to working a little bit of part time, um, in order to give myself time for school. And this term, I decided to go back to working full time along with school. So really, just that addition. Plus, this has been a very labor intensive course load for me this term, so has brought about some pretty high situational demands, really high demands for me on that. From work to the gym to school to all that kind of stuff. Um, sorry. So that kind of brought about a negative cognitive appraisal of school. I really started to develop negative feelings towards it. I honestly really, really dread doing my schoolwork at this point in time. Um, I cannot stand it. I don't want to do it. I would rather be doing anything else at this very moment, too, if I'm being completely brutally honest with you, Dr. G. Um, but that has brought about a negative physiological response, right? As I have schoolwork to do still, it's bringing with me more stress, and that's, I get that irritability. I get that, that kind of like that constant irritability and stress and stuff like that, that brings about, just like I have to like really suppress my emotions. I have to suppress my desire to not do it, just to kind of like suck it up and do it. And that brings about that, that emotional negligence, right? Or negligence, I guess, isn't the right word, but it's the only word that I can think of. I forgot the actual word, but it brings about that negative emotional response, that lack of emotions, I guess, and that brings about that, lethargy and all that kind of stuff, which goes into the physiological response, right? From that lethargy, you'd think, when you're feeling lethargic, you'd be tired all the time, but man, I haven't been sleeping at all. I've been only getting like 3 to 5 hours a night, which is not enough, and that's just making everything worse. Because the demands are being increased on me, and that's bringing about more behavioral changes, right? More lethargy and more, bringing those emotions down lower, bringing about more anxiety, more stress, all that kind of stuff. Just this big cycle, and it's driving me insane. Um, so it is something that I have learned, and it is something that I do want to learn more about, especially how to get out of that cycle because it sucks. I haven't really figured out how to relieve it yet, so I will be learning, looking to look more into that after the course is over and as it draws into a close. So I think that finishes us out. Here's the reference page, and you can pause that as needed. And I think that's all I got for you, Dr. G. All right. Bye bye, and God bless.